is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back to talk about the Detroit Lions draft. And today, we are talking about the Lions' top 2 picks in this year's draft. We got a little behind the scenes on the process for Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes with these 2 picks. Also, apparently the Lions had a solid trade offer that they passed on. So let's get it started. Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. I thought we'd talk a little bit about some of the behind the scenes information we got on our Lions top 2 picks. Now, we have not done the film videos on these 2 guys yet. That's Sewell and Levi out of Washington, but those videos are coming. Trust me, they're coming. We're getting there. We're just not there yet. However, we got a little bit of behind the scenes. This was on Sports Illustrated, and I thought I would just share it with you guys if you haven't seen it, because it was kind of interesting, some of the stuff we got to learn about it. We've learned about a lot of these picks, but I thought the stories behind this were just kind of cool, you know, for a first-time GM and a first-time head coach, first time working together. Let's talk about the Lions' first pick first in this year's draft, pick number 7, Sewell. Now, we know how important the draft was to the Detroit Lions. As Brad Holmes, apparently he had 3 elements for the Detroit Lions to be successful. 3 elements that they had to do successfully to be successful as a team. And that number 1 element was find a way to win a draft. We know how important the draft is to a guy like Brad Holmes, as he has told us he wants to build through the draft. So obviously you got to win the draft. Now, I think it's really tough. I mean, the national media has been saying that the Lions have absolutely just done great in the draft. I feel like they did really well as well. But the thing is, like, okay, it's tough to judge because bad coaching can make a good draft a bad draft. Good coaching can make a draft that you question really good, right? It's all about situation, how well you coach these players. So it's really tough to gauge right after the draft how well they did. But the good thing is nationally, people believe that the Lions did really, really well in this draft. So that's cool. Brad Holmes also told us that because, you know, these guys were going to be collaborative, they were going to, you know, work together on every decision. Not one guy has the final say, is that we're going to be collaborative. We're not going to not talk about things before it happened. And I think Dan Campbell hit on this perfectly, saying that basically a true alpha knows like when it's time to concede to the final roster move, you know, to kind of go with what everybody else believes in. If I'm different from everybody else, let me figure out why they believe what they believe. Basically just working together. We were kind of worried, you know, hey, is that going to be a problem? Is that going to be a problem for the Detroit Lions? And clearly it wasn't, you know, in this year's draft, at least as of what we know. We know it actually worked out extremely well for the Detroit Lions. Now, coming into the draft, both of these guys, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, had a few things that they would look for in draft prospects. Brad Holmes, you know, was looking at the explosiveness of a player. Defensively, he was all about the length, which is definitely what fits Melly, which we already talked about. So go check out that video. But they had a couple of things. And Dan Campbell was all about the grit, you know, not only just on the film, but also, you know, off the field, the background, you know, what he's went through, the adversity, all that, the grit of a player. And apparently Sewell checked all of those boxes for both of these guys. The thing is, Sewell isn't the only guy that checks these boxes of explosiveness. This was the 2nd most athletic draft in the last 13 years for the Detroit Lions. When you roll through the RAS scores for all of these guys, I mean, some are maybe lower, like a Jamar Jefferson as your 7th round pick, you know, but you look at Levi, who also had a, you know, great athletic showing, you know, with his burst at his size. Lee McNeil, same thing there. I mean, throughout the draft, they definitely, not only Sewell, but many of these players that we brought in, you know, really checked those boxes, at least to some degree. I mean, St. Brown, you know, he's no burner, right? But there's still athleticism there. I mean, when you talk about his vertical. So all these guys, the Lions definitely stay with the explosive and athletic guys for most of their draft picks. And you could argue that all these guys have grit as well. Trust the film, you know, just trust the film that you watch. But of course, Brad Holmes is the guy that likes to go and look back just to take a look at the numbers, because if obviously it's a small school guy who's really doing well, but he's running really slow times, that could be concerning because the level of competition is going to be way different. But basically, trust the film. And Sewell checked all of these boxes for the Detroit Lions. But then it came draft time, and the idea was that he wasn't going to be available. Now, we had a lot of rumors out there. Lions were interested in trading up to 4 for Jamar Chase. We don't know what's true and what's not. But regardless, you know, the feel was he's probably not going to be available at number 7. But once Jalen Waddle was picked at number 6, the Detroit Lions, he was right there. I mean, he was right there. But apparently there was also a solid trade offer on the table for the Detroit Lions. Now, Brad Holmes said this was a tough decision that they had to make. We don't know what the trade offer was, but Holmes said basically the best way to describe it is that he feels like they could have possibly landed Sewell while still taking this trade back offer. So we don't know what team this is. I kind of was thinking maybe like Philly. Philly jumped up from number 12 to number 10 to take Devontae Smith. So maybe that's what it was. I don't know who it was. It must not have been that far if that's what he's saying. saying. But regardless, even if they would have moved back just to Denver at number 9, a team like Carolina could have easily took Penei Sewell. So it was a tough decision that they had to made, but Brad Holmes basically said that everybody around him was like, hey, just trust our board. He said we could have been cute, we could have messed this up, it could have changed our board, but he said the good thing is that when you look at the reaction, we obviously saw the reaction after Lions took Penei Sewell, is that reaction shows that everybody was on the same page with this pick, okay? And Dan Campbell said it the best. He's like, hey, I know the things out there, you're supposed to act like you've been there before, but we haven't been there before, man. This is the first time. And the fact that he was available, we just felt like we landed the pick, and everybody in the room shared the same excitement. And I feel like that is a very good tell of, how your draft pick actually went. Because Brad Holmes told us, hey, there's a handful of guys that we're willing to take at number 7 if we're there. But how would the reaction have been with a different pick? To Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes says that, we're going to identify the players we like. When you're making a big board, right, you put the guys at the top that you love the most. Even if it's not realistic, he may be there, you put him at the top, right? And those are the guys that collectively, he said, that everybody can sign off on, if we draft it. When we write that name down, we turn that slip, everybody's going to get excited. It's not split in half. Now, you're going to have decisions like that. You don't have to. When you have the opportunity to take someone that literally everyone is completely sold on, why would you pass that opportunity, to have it split at all? You take that guy, because that was a great reaction. And the thing is, the Lions, yeah, maybe they could have traded back, but the fact that Sewell's there, he checked all the boxes for everybody. Their initial reactions to these guys were not similar in terms of how they necessarily, like, what they talked about, but how they felt about them. For example, Brad Holmes is like, man, I haven't seen feet like that since Orlando Pace back with the Rams. At his size, we know he's 330, the way he can move, and obviously we brought up the explosiveness, how important that is, the upside there. And Dan Campbell, we know we've heard a lot since then, but Dan Campbell, his initial reaction was like, man, this guy's got grit. He's the type of player that he messed up because he's trying to kill somebody. But that's what you want, and it really is what you want. We can calm a player down, but can we really get him to, turn up, basically, and go crazy on a guy? That's what you want. And Brad Holmes said that when they met with him before the draft, they talked to him, swagger about him. He was confident, but he also had humility. And he was like, dang, if we land this guy. So it definitely seems like the Lions didn't make the right decision. And we've kind of touched on it, right? It was one of the things where, you could have moved back. You could have tried being cute, but ultimately everybody loved him. So you don't want to just pass that, with maybe he's there, but I don't know if everybody's going to be in love with this pick like this one. The guy was there. They fell in love with it. They loved the dude, and everybody was in agreement. So that's a great thing to see. We questioned how that would be, and right away it came up. You had a decision to make. Do you trade back? Do you stay here? Who do you take? And the Lions, they decided to stay there, and you could see the reaction by everybody. But then you move to the second day, okay? This is day number 2, the second round for the Lions, and I thought this was a really cool story. We've heard a lot of behind the scenes, but with the Lions picking Levi out of Washington. Now, Brad Holmes told us that there was talks amongst the room about trading into day 1, to go land Levi, because that's how much they liked Levi out of Washington, the pass rusher. But they ultimately decided, no, we're going to be patient, we're going to stick with this, and he didn't get drafted in the first round. So then they head into day 2. He's one of the top 3. There's 3 guys apparently they were eyeing at that number 41 spot, or I guess in the second round, the beginning of the second round, and Levi was obviously up there. And Campbell, Brad Holmes, they met up together before the start of round 2, a private meeting between those two, and they went through and they basically asked themselves, we take this guy over Levi? Will we take this guy over Levi? And they came to the conclusion that basically they would take those 2 guys over Levi, which is kind of crazy. But the fact that we were hearing about, we had talks about trading into day 1 about this, trading into day 1 of Levi, and now we're going to take these 2 guys over him. But then when they did this same exercise with the rest of the room, with the rest of the draft room later in the day, Brad Holmes pointed to the board, he pointed to Levi, and Dan Campbell just laughed. And Dan Campbell said, man, my mind was already going that way, and it was cool how, without even discussing it, between leaving when we decided that we were going to go these 2 guys over him, that we are now on the same page that, yeah, we need to take Levi. Levi's our guy, okay? That's who we like. And that can happen. Sometimes you start thinking things, you talk about too much, and then you start thinking others, he's like, wait a minute, are we sure we want that? But it's almost, it reminds me of the draft day thing, right? Where he pulls it out and he's like, okay, this is the guy, no matter what, this is who we're drafting. And it's just like, you get back to it and you're like, okay, hold up. We may have just overthought the heck out of this, which is very possible to do. We do that as fans, but we may have just overthought this. This is our dude. And Dan Campbell's like, you're right. This is our guy. Why are we even thinking about this? We were thinking about trading into this guy just a night ago. And now we're talking about 2 other guys we take over him. So it was kind of cool how they like came together. They didn't know he'd fall to 41, but he did fall to 41 and they took it. And obviously Levi is now a Detroit Lion. He said he was a little bit surprised by the pick. He had a great introductory. But I just think these stories are great when you get to hear something behind the scenes. Now, I don't know who those other two guys are. I've heard that Jeremiah Owusu could have been one of those players. I don't know. Maybe that's just thrown out there. Trayvon Merrick, maybe. I don't know. I mean, Elijah Moore. I don't know who they were talking about. You know, I don't know who the other two guys were. Ed Holmes pointed to the board of Levi. It was before, you know, they were even on the clock. So it was, okay, this is our guy. What are we doing? What are we thinking? This is our dude. Why are we overthinking this? All right. If the guy's there, we're taking him. And he was there and they took him. I just think these are really cool stories. I think it's really awesome to see how it really came together. It worked out well, that there wasn't friction. You know, they did. I mean, they really collaborated extremely well. And yeah, sometimes you get a little bit of luck in terms of guys that you wanted to fall. But that's why I've really praised the way that Brad Holmes set up his draft board. I don't know what it looked like, but it seemed like the kind of guys that he wanted, they just kept landing to him. And the certain guys that I thought would go certain places were falling to different spots. He definitely was on top of his draft board. See, he's the draft guy. He's got to know about all the other teams, what everything could happen, right? And that's tough. That's a lot of work. But he knew the draft board. He understood certain receivers that were going to fall out. He understood, you know, what guys could fall. And even though, you know, Dan Campbell was shocked that a guy like Melifonwu fell to the third round in that comp pick, they were able to take him because they trusted their board. They didn't need to trade up. The only time to trade up was for Derek Barnes, and it was clear at that point that the linebackers were going, they were going to have to make it happen. So I love the fact that they were willing to bounce up, willing to move around, but at the same time, they're also very patient. They trust their board because based on how it went, I probably would have reached on some picks compared to how the Lions were able to do it. So I thought the stories were great. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think that trade-off was? Do you think the Lions should have traded back depending on what the offer was? I'm perfectly fine with them staying at 7. If everybody's in agreement like that, you take I mean, if you saw that reaction, they wanted him. I mean, how can you look at that reaction and say, oh, they shouldn't have done that? Like, they wanted that guy. That was their dude. And ultimately, the guys will be successful with good coaching if you coach well. So we'll see how that goes, but definitely some cool stories. So let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching. And